Whether you like the Bulls or not, there's no denying that Michael Jordan was one of the best players to ever step onto the court. He's the guy that every player since has aspired to be, and when hoopers are trying to break basketball records, they are usually set by his airness. In this video, we're going to look back over his career and revisit some of his craziest moments on the court. We'll start with one game that actually came during his stint with the Wizards. When Jordan returned to the NBA, playing for the Washington Wizards, most people thought that it wasn't the best idea. He was certainly out of his prime and hard to develop a team around. During his Wizards tenure, he had a game against the Pacers where he only managed to score 6 points against the Pacers. Clearly, these weren't his glory days. But there was at least one game during this time where he definitely proved to the world that he still had something left to give. It was a bad day to be in the Charlotte Hornets, as Jordan went ahead and demolished the team in a performance that was very much worthy of his days in Chicago. Putting up 51 points in the match, he carried the Wizards to a 107-90 win in the match. There's some irony in the fact that he went on to buy out the team after his balling career. This alone doesn't change the fact that his best days were behind him when he played for the Wizards, but when you're the best, you're the best. Let's take it way back now to 1991. Here we are in the midst of MJ's glory days. While the man was a clutch asset every time the Bulls had to face another team, he was known to dial it all the way up during the playoffs, especially during the finals. But in 1991, the Bulls were facing off against the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the few sides at the time that could go toe-to-toe with them. In fact, they'd actually won Game 1 in one of these finals. The Bulls fired back in Game 2 by giving the Lakers a proper thrashing. Jordan himself gave a performance that stands out in his record as one of his all-time greats. He even set the record for most consecutive field goals scored with 13 field goals. But the most memorable moment of the match came with his airborne switch hand move, one that was described by commentator Marv Albert as spectacular. Jordan wasn't just a numbers guy at the end of the day, the guy had flair. Now, the year after that saw another GOAT Finals performance. If you put a gun to our heads and demanded us to tell you something Jordan wasn't good at, we suppose we'd have to go with three-pointers. Every player has to have a basic ability to shoot them when the team needs them, but Jordan wasn't quite the right man for the job, until he proved that he was. In the 1992 Finals, Chicago had some work to do against the Portland Trail Blazers, and that's exactly what they did. Jordan himself dominated his opponents by setting 2 records in a single match. First off, he scored 35 points against them in just the first half. But remember how we said that three-pointers were his weakness? Well, he set the record for 6 three-pointers in this match. If that's what it looks like when he's weak at something, you know that we aren't messing around. The fun thing about this is that even Jordan couldn't believe what he'd just done, giving a confused shrug to Magic Johnson sitting at courtside. The guy literally couldn't believe his own greatness. He'd gone to rack up 39 points, 3 rebounds, 11 assists, and 2 steals, having only spent around half an hour on the court. Now look, we couldn't have a list like this without including The Shot. It was Game 5 of the first round of the 1989 Eastern Conference, and things were right down to the wire. The Bulls were tied with the Cavaliers, both in the first round of the conference and in the game itself. Everything was on the line, and there were just 3 seconds left to go. Jordan received an inbound pass, rushed the basket, and made one of the most iconic buzzer-beating clutch shots in the history of the NBA, winning the game for the Bulls. This is a match finish that's so iconic, it has its own Wikipedia page. The Shot even overshadows the fact that Jordan scored a mighty 44 points in a match that has gone down as a classic. His celebration of his last-second save has even become the logo of his sportswear brand. Speaking of which, ask a basketball fan why they love the Bread Jordan 4s if you're ever feeling like hearing this story. Most importantly though, this may be the night when Michael Jordan established himself as more than just a pretty good player. Depending on who you ask, this was the beginning of the Michael Jordan legend, cementing him as part of a squad that would dominate the decade to come. From there, we'll move on to Jordan's career highest point total. Moments like The Shot are iconic, but it's the stats that count, right? At the end of the day, you gotta score the most points and prevent the other team from scoring anything, and that's how the game works. But when it comes to points, there was one game where Jordan went the distance, and then he went way further. We have another game against the Cavaliers here, this one taking place in March 1990. The Bulls were having kind of a tough time with the Cavaliers' defense, and MJ even got a foul during the match. That seemed to flip a switch inside him, and he proceeded to destroy the Cavaliers for the rest of the match. 69 points with 18 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. Not only is that his career best performance, but any player would love to say that he could manage stats like that in a single game. Heck, even Jordan never quite reached a score like that again. This was a masterpiece level performance, and one that'll be remembered by NBA fans forever. Heading into the top 3 moments on our list, we gotta start with the flu game. When you have a best-of-7 tournament tied 2-2, the fifth game is vital. Statistically, the team that wins Game 5 usually ends up going home the champs. That's why things were tense in the 1997 NBA Finals, though the winds seemed to be favoring the Utah Jazz, the arch enemies of the Bulls in the 90s. It didn't help the red team that the game was being played in the Jazz's home turf, where the crowd was especially hostile, but the Bulls had a much bigger problem on their hands. This match is called the flu game, but what Jordan was actually suffering from that night was a stomach virus. Nevertheless, he was very visibly sick and tired. It was apparently Jordan who was determined to play his heart out to help his team gain a foothold in this final series. The Jazz got a good start by scoring 16 points, but Jordan's game kicked in, and he closed the gap in the second quarter. With the game tied at the end of the fourth quarter, his airness hit a three-pointer to put the Bulls ahead and take the game for his team. The numbers he posted were some of his best, and Jordan was able to head back to Chicago and collapse in his bed, we think, knowing that he led his team to greatness one more time. Next, we have Game 2 of the first round of the 1986 Eastern Conference. In 1986, Michael Jordan was in his second pro season. He had shown enough potential to get a shoe deal with Nike, but he wasn't the titanic figure in the sport that he would go on to become. At the time, it was the Boston Celtics who were believed to be fielding the best squad in the league. Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, and Bill Walton are all Hall of Famers, and they happened to be on the same team at the same time. They were rated third best in offense and number 1 in defense. Unfortunately for them, their prowess was about to be tested by a true legend in the making. Jordan absolutely crushed this game, and the most impressive part is that he closed the game with 63 points scored. Keep in mind that this would ultimately be the second best score of his entire career, and he scored it against the top-rated defense in the entire NBA. Like we said, Jordan isn't good at three-pointers. He did it all without them. Now, this is no knock against the legendary Celtics squad. These guys' numbers absolutely speak for themselves, but the game Jordan played against them also spoke for itself, and it heralded the arrival of the league's greatest player. Finally, we have the last shot. When the Bulls were playing the finals in 1998, it was expected that this was Michael Jordan's last season. And sure, Jordan didn't necessarily give his best performance in the sixth and season-winning game of the finals, but did he go out on a high note? He sure did. Interestingly, this game was also played against the Jazz, and while Jordan had a clean bill of health, they were still playing on their home turf against that hostile crowd. And even though the team was free of viruses, they were plagued by fatigue. Jordan and Pippen were both playing long stretches of consecutive games, even as Pippen was recovering from a back injury. The odds were definitely against them. It was a fiery game between two of the best teams in the NBA. With 1 minute to go, the match was tied up. Stockton broke the lead with a three-pointer at 41.9 seconds to the buzzer, and that might have been the end of the line, if not for Jordan scoring a basket to narrow the lead in the next 4 seconds. With 5.2 seconds left to go, Jordan stole the ball from Malone and sank it to give the Bulls a 1-point lead. But 1 point is enough. This was the third championship in the Bulls' second three-peat, and it ultimately became the high note that ended Jordan's time with the Bulls. That's it for today. Let us know in the comment section below which of Jordan's highlights are your favorites. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.